Good Tuesday morning, everybody. It is June 22nd, and it is 2021 for those that are watching this in a different year. We are, as we have been, working our way through the book of Acts. We are in the 21st chapter, and today we're going to look at verses 17 through 26. We've been the last few days with Paul bound and determined to get himself to Jerusalem, even though people have been warning him that it's not good, and nothing good is coming for you in Jerusalem, for him personally, of course. It's good for the overall faith and the fate of Christianity, of course. But Paul is determined and laser focused on Jerusalem, and even though he's well aware of what awaits him, and even though he's been warned, he's getting there, and he gets there today. So we start off again in verse 17, going through 26 in the 21st chapter of Acts. So let's see where Paul is at. When we arrived in Jerusalem, the brothers welcomed us warmly. The next day, Paul went with us to visit James, and all the elders were present. After greeting them, he related one by one the things that God had done among the Gentiles through his ministry. When they heard it, they praised God. Then they said to him, "You see, brother, how many thousands of believers there are among the Jews, and they are all zealous for the law. They have been told about you that you teach all the Jews living among the Gentiles to forsake Moses, and that you tell them not to circumcise their children or observe the customs. What then is to be done? They will certainly hear that you have come. So do what we tell you. We have 4 men who are under a vow. Join these men, go through the rite of purification with them, and pay for the shaving of their heads. Thus all will know that there is nothing in what they have been told about you, but that you yourself observe and guard the law. But as for the Gentiles who have become believers, we have sent a letter from our judgment, that they should abstain from what has been sacrificed to idols, and from blood, and from what is strangled, and from fornication." Then Paul took the men, and the next day, having purified himself, he entered the temple with them, making public the completion of the days of purification, when the sacrifice would be made for each of them. Okay. Paul has gotten to Jerusalem, and the day after he gets there, he and all of his traveling band, including, it would seem, Luke, go to see James and all the other disciples that are there in Jerusalem. Now, this is a second time in Acts where it's clear that the leader is James. Okay, and Paul in Galatians, I think he says he goes up to see James, that he saw no one else but James, if I remember correctly, in Galatians. Maybe I should pull that up. Yeah, I don't see it. I had part of Galatians up on my screen, but I don't see that part. But at any rate, James is the leader of the church in the early days. That's my belief. I know that my Catholic friends will argue with me about that, as wanting Peter to be, but I think it's pretty clear that in Acts that James is the head. He is the guy. James the Just, the brother of Christ, is who this is. So James, he goes before James and the others, and they are... this is what I like about Luke. This is really the kind of the meat of the matter of what I like about Luke. He's really working hard to reconcile these 2 factions of the early church, Paul and James. And James is in Jerusalem, has been in Jerusalem ever since Jesus was crucified, as far as we know, and stays there until he's martyred in around 63 AD. And as far as we know, he is in the temple every day, teaching and preaching and talking about Jesus. So he is right there in Jerusalem as the kind of the anchor for the whole thing, if you want to look at it that way. And when he is martyred, some people feel that, or some thoughts was that's why 7 years later the temple was destroyed, out of retribution for James's being killed. But we're not going to get into that today. Here it shows a very strong desire on Paul's part, on James' part, on everyone's part, to bring Paul back into the fold, so to say, to reconcile their differences. Because I mentioned Galatians, and Galatians is my favorite book of Paul's, partly because it shows this relationship between James and Paul very, very well, and not necessarily in the nicest, in the kindest light either. Paul says some very harsh things in Galatians. He talks about that he didn't go up to see them right away in Jerusalem, that he waited 14 years before he ever went and talked to any of the disciples. Let's see what we have here. In chapter 2, verse 6, he's talking about the disciples, and James and them, when he goes to see them. And from those who are supposed to be acknowledged leaders, what they actually were makes no difference to me. God shows no partiality. Those leaders contributed nothing to me. And then later he goes on and earlier he basically places a curse upon what I think was the disciples. And then later on he comments in Galatians what I believe he's talking about as, again, the other disciples, wishing they would just go ahead and castrate themselves. So he says some harsh words, and I think the other disciples, if they got wind of this letter or saw this letter, they might be a little bit hot, not particularly happy with Paul, rather. So there's a need to bring these two groups together to mend the fences, as we would say in the Midwest. So I think that's what's going on here. And Paul has been instructed to take part in a Nazarite ritual, where he's going through this ritual purification period, where he is going to make a vow, go through this period of days of fasting, most likely, and then at the end having head shaved and sacrificing to God. We talked about Nazarite sacrifices before. It seems like Paul may have already been involved in one, and he's on his way there already to complete those sacrifices. So that's probably a big reason why he's been there, and we've talked about that. But now he's basically taking on another vow, it appears here, and he's also, as penalty for his waywardness, he is also being instructed to pay for these other four guys that are doing a similar thing. And they're going through a Nazarite process or a Nazarite vow. So that's what's going on here. And he's going in there. Much is made about this, from both sides, people that want to deny the Jewishness of Paul and those that want to embrace the Jewishness of Paul. And I think that there's too much is made about Paul rejecting Judaism. Paul's a Jew, and this is, to me, I'm sorry, this shows you Paul is Jewish. I mean, and he's not. He may be saying for the Gentile believers, the converts, he is saying that they don't have to become fully Jewish. But if you're already a Jew, you're a Jew in Paul's eyes. You don't negate that. For he's not doing it for himself. Why would he promote that to others? So for him, he doesn't have a problem with going through this Nazarite ritual, and he's doing it. That's what he does, and he acquiesces to James's instructions. He is recognizing here in Luke's gospel the authority of James. He's submitting to the authority of James, and that's an important thing. James is the leader. James says goes. That's just the way it is here. And so we will pick up what happens after this time that he's in the temple. But he is going to be spending time in the temple. It's possible he's going to be spending all this time in the temple. If he's fasting, he may not be leaving the temple grounds. I don't know. Though it seems to say later tomorrow, there seems to be possible that he's been moving around in Jerusalem, but we don't know for sure. That might have been prior to this time of him doing his commitment, or who knows. At any rate, we'll deal with that tomorrow. So I will let you go for today. It is an important bit of scripture, though, and I really look at this and I see, as I said, the beauty of Luke is that he's reconciling these two disagreements. And the other thing is also excuse me, there were and there still are actually Jewish Christians, people that practice the whole of the law and worship Christ as the Messiah. So we forget that today, I think, in our way of thinking. But they're still out there. But there was definitely that faction early on in the church. Jerusalem, obviously, these people were practicing Jews, but even onward later, there were groups of Jewish Christians that followed the law and accepted Christ as the Messiah. So with that, I'm going to let you go. I apologize for my coughing attack. Still dealing with some issues with breathing and a little bit of I think a little bit of brain fog too here from the COVID. I blame that. I had brain fog prior, but maybe it's a little worse now. No? At any rate, have a blessed day, and please be a blessing to someone today. We will see you in the morning. Bye-bye.